This is the beginning of something huge. And while the Leafs have been very busy this offseason making a bunch of moves, there is one thing that not a lot of fans are talking about that changes the outlook of this team, not only for the rest of this offseason, but beyond as well. We're going to break down exactly what that is and discuss, of course, what it means going forward, as well as multiple other Leafs updates on this episode, folks. But before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, it's the place to be for daily Leafs content. Your guys' support has been unbelievable. About 70% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed to the channel, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're producing content every single day and continue to do so, especially with the season right around the corner. So if you're part of that 70%, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Darius, a lot to go over today. And obviously, we're going to be taking another step back and talking about a player that was recently extended, but kind of got overshadowed by what has been a crazy offseason of Mitch Marner leaving, the trade for Michelli, Dakota Joshua, all these different guys. Let's dive into the conversation point of today, which is Matthew Knies. Now, let's start with this. We know back on June 28th, the beginning of the summer, he signed a 6-year extension worth $7.75 million in Toronto. Now, we covered this on the channel a lot, obviously, and he's been a great player. It was a great, year last year for him. But it was overshadowed a little bit by Mitch Marner, of course, being, not being extended, but I guess getting traded technically in a sign and trade. And Matthew Knies recently came out, and he's obviously doing stuff with the fans and all these different things. But he came out and spoke out about not only the impact that Toronto's had in his life, but specifically John Tavares and how much he's grown as a player. We'll dive into this quote and discuss some other things. So he said, "Every day here, I learn more." Talking about first day living with the Tavares family. Of course, he lived with them. Tremendous how much my game has matured and how I've learned to be a leader and a teammate and how to manage his body over 82 games. So Darius, I want to talk today on, of course, Matthew Knies and what his impact is going to be going forward, because he had a very solid, bit brief, rookie year, great year last year, and now heading into next season, he has a real chance now to be an absolute difference maker. And I don't think people are talking enough about how much his game is going to either be elevated or at least be in the spotlight with Mitch Marner now departing.
Yeah, I think he has a chance to be a borderline star in this league. Honestly, I think he's barely scraping the surface of what he's capable of on this team, and he's going to get a bigger role next season. He's going to be relied upon to play in different situations and obviously some big minutes, which he was last year. Obviously, he was playing on the top line, but just so much more heading into next year. And again, he had a great year last year. He almost scored 30 goals. He's putting up points. That was really his breakout year. But again, I think that he has another level to get to, and he's going to, show that off this season. So obviously he was doing a meet and greet with the fans on Saturday, which is great. He did some media, spoke out like this quote. We have another quote we're going to get to in a second, as well as and some projections in terms of what we think Matthew Knies is going to do next year later in the episode. So stay tuned for that. But I think that, again, he's just scratching the surface. Like, looking back at some of Matthew Knies' goals last year, he barely scores off the rush, and we know that he can do that, and he's done that in the past. So if he adds that to his skill set at the NHL level as well, this contract is going to look like an absolute steal. It already kind of does compared to some other contracts that have been signed later in the summer to similar money and term with some of the younger players. It already looks like a steal. And he's come out and said that he wants to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. Like, he's done everything right? He's taken steps every single season. He's that new age power forward. He wants to be here. He wants to win here. And that's clear through his play and what he says. And I think that all Leaf fans can rally behind a guy like this, because when it's the opposite, it's really hard to get behind a player that is the opposite of that. So, Leaf fans at the end of the day, and it's always been this way, just want a guy who puts his head down, scores some goals, gets to the dirty areas, and does, plays the game the right way. And Matthew Knies is exactly that. So again, if he can add, scoring on the rush, which he's playing with Austin Matthews, so he doesn't even have to do that. Just go to the net and I'm sure you'll score, or you'll pick up an assist. But I feel like this year, I wonder if he adds some penalty kill time to his plate, and Craig Berube trusts him with that, right? Of course, they need some more players on the penalty kill. They do have a bunch, right? But you never know what happens, and there are injuries throughout the course of a season. So I wonder if they add that, right? He's going to take a step in point production. That is for sure. He was great on the power play last year as well. You need him net front. And John Tavares, I imagine, will be there as well. So I'm really excited to see what he does next year. I think he's going to take another gigantic leap. And for the money that he's locked up to for the next 6 years with the cap going up, this is a steal. This guy, I think, is going to be a borderline star.
Yeah, and obviously his contract, especially with kind of similar to your guys, Slavkovsky's and all these different things, and whether you want to compare it or not, with the cap going up, you mentioned it, it's going to be a steal, 7.75, but he's locked up now through his age, 28 season. Oh, yeah, 28 season, I believe it is, which is crazy because he's going to be due for another payday. And the fact that he's only 22 years old and he was manning the first line of a team that lost in game 7 to the defending Stanley Cup champions back-to-back years now is wild. And he went on and spoke some other things about both Marner leaving and the new additions to the team. It'll be a bit different without Mitch, but the acquisitions we've made with Michelli, center Nicolas Watt, and thumper Dakota Joshua have been looking good. I don't know what we'll put together at the start of the season, but we have a lot of great players on our team. That's an interesting thing he said there. I don't know what we'll put together at the start of the season. I don't know if he means about winning or most likely the lines and how those lines are going to work, because no one really knows yet. I don't think Craig Berube knows yet. There's been some rumblings about Michelli on the first line, obviously Dakota Joshua on the fourth line or third line, Nicholas Watt probably manning the third line center with, Scott Lawton, and that'll be something we have lots of time to talk about. But he wants to find long-term success, and I think that's the biggest, point I want to make here is that regardless of they need to win a Stanley Cup in the next couple of years. This is their window, but locking up a future superstar, I think, is the beginning of something huge. And it's not like Austin Matthews is super old either. And I think that now with the new additions, this is the beginning of a new, I guess you could call it a new era. Obviously, the defensive core is aging a little bit, but at the same time, they have to win now. You have Nylander 29, Matthews 27, Knies 22. Like, it's a pretty young in their prime core. This is the time to go. And aside from Matthew Knies, they don't have that many young players on the team, so this is the time to go for it. You have Michelli at 24, but he's going to be a pending RFA. We assume they'll extend him, but this is the time to go for it. And I think it's the beginning of a huge season next year, and something that was talked about a little bit at the time, but really not a lot of people have been talking about since it happened because of the 3 other acquisitions they made and the departure of course, the star player Mitch Marner.
Yeah, and I think that, where the Leafs are at right now, not having young players on the team is not a bad thing. They're going for a Stanley Cup, right? And Nathan MacKinnon came out last year and said, you can't win in this league with a young team. He said that. He truly believes that. And that's a guy who's won the Stanley Cup recently. So I'm not worried about that. But in terms of what the lines will look like, I'm sure Craig Berube has something penciled in right now and has something on that depth chart in his office. But obviously, you never know in terms of chemistry what's going to work and what's not going to work. So obviously, we'll get a glimpse into that the first day of training camp and obviously once the preseason rolls around. But personally, looking at the lines and who's available, I think Michelli could make a lot of sense with that line. You have 2 guys that can score goals. You know that. Matthews is probably going to aim for 50 and above this year, at least, personally. I would assume he's trying to go for that. And obviously, Matthew Knies wants to build off of an almost 30-goal campaign. So, those 2 guys can score. Put a playmaker up there. I think that would be great, right? And you have 2 big bodies. Matthews is a physical player. I know a lot of people say he isn't. Watch the games. He is, and he's great defensively. Matthew Knies, same thing, like that new age power forward. He plays very physically, right? If you put a smaller playmaker with them in Michelli, that could be a recipe for success. So that's what I'm seeing right now. Obviously, the chemistry has to be there, and we have to see how that plays out. And obviously, Matthew Knies, too. He's been invited to the Olympic camp. So he has a chip on his shoulder. He's going to try and make that team. And obviously, he's going to do that through, the training camp. And obviously, when they get all together and have their training camps for the Olympic, team. But through the season with the Toronto Maple Leafs, he wants to turn heads, right? So if you put a playmaker there, I feel like that could be a recipe for success. So in terms of what he's going to do this year, I think Matthew Knies is going to surprise a lot of people again.
Yeah, let us know what your thoughts are. It's an interesting one. It's always curious to see how these young players and players in general play after their contract gets signed, because some players become complacent, others a bit less pressure on Knies now. He has his financial future locked up, so he can just play free. But let us know down below what your thoughts are. Coming off of a 29-goal, 29 assist season for 58 points. Let us know down below your predictions for what he'll do next year. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.